The Monk of Eyes, or a Witch Doctor, are a few terms used to describe the character that I'm analysing in this video. Zommari Rureaux belongs to Aizen's elite group of arrancar, the Espada. He only really takes part in one battle during the series, but it is enough for us to learn about his abilities and his Resurreccion. In addition to this, we learn quite a bit about his personality, and his deluded belief that he was an equal to Byakuya who had defeated him. So while we see very little of him within the story, let's go through everything that we know about Zommari, including his incredible feats of speed, his loyalty to Aizen, and ultimately all of the things that had led up to his death. Before the video begins, only 20% of the people who actually watch my content are subscribed to the channel. If you enjoy these videos, then subscribe and stick around for more content just like this. Now let's get back to the topic of the video. Zommari makes his debut appearance within chapter 244 of the manga and in episode 145 of the anime. He is the 7th ranking Espada within Aizen's army of arrancar. He is a dark-skinned arrancar with a tall and well-built physique. You'll immediately notice the remnants of his hollow mask, which are arranged in a row of spikes which run down the middle portion of the top of his head. Because of the way that they are positioned, it appears as though he has a mohawk. In addition to this, he wears 2 skull-shaped earrings, as well as a necklace of bones that typically a witch doctor would wear. Unique to him, he also has some tattoos on his face, which consist of the 3 triangle shapes on his chin and the 4 lines that run down the top of each of his eyes. These quirks within his character design aid in him having a very eerie and spooky appearance. And if you thought all of that was strange enough, he also has golden eyes. The way that Zommari has fashioned his arrancar outfit is similar to that of a monk, and in line with this theme of a monk, his personality completely matches with it, as he is the type of character who prefers to be on his own and to meditate, resulting in him coming across as being very calm and thoughtful, while initially being introduced as this very composed monk-like character. During his battle against Byakuya, we quickly see his composure crumble. He is also pretty condescending when he first meets Byakuya, as he genuinely believes that he is an equal to the captain. Despite his meditative practices, he is a very overconfident individual, and this ends up being his biggest weakness. He had completely underestimated the abilities of Byakuya and had believed that he was superior to him without having seen the full extent of Byakuya's power. Now, while Zommari has some very interesting abilities, his largest failure of all is acting within due time. He had taken far too long to strike Byakuya when he had plenty of opportunity to do so, and despite him stating that he was the fastest amongst the arrancar, the time that he had taken to strike was also a downfall of his character. When you're up against a powerful captain like Byakuya, the last thing that you want to do is give him time to fight back. Now, within the Espada, its members demonstrate various degrees of loyalty towards Aizen, and when it comes to the character of Zommari, he has a lot of loyalty for him. This is demonstrated moments before his death in chapter 302, where he yells out praises for his leader. So admittedly, Zommari is one of the most forgettable members of the Espada, but in this video we're going to go through all of his appearances now and completely break down his battle with Byakuya. We first see Zommari in chapter 244 when he is sat with all of the other Espada. They learn that the intruders that have just entered into Hueco Mundo were the very group that had invaded the Soul Society. Zommari comments upon there being 4 that had invaded the Soul Society and there is only 3 this time. When he asks who is missing, Ukiura reveals that it is Orihime. The next time that we see Zommari is in chapter 269. While meditating in his room, he senses the death of his fellow Espada Aaroniero. We then see him appear on the actual battlefield where Aaroniero was defeated, as he comments upon the last of the first generation of Espada having come to a pitiful end. And while he stands watching over the body of Rukia, he states that in typical fashion Aaroniero didn't finish the job. He comments on how the other Espada are too soft, and that the intruders cannot be left alive, they must be killed. He unsheaths his Zanbakuto and states that there is only one way to be sure, as he intends to separate Rukia's head from her body. He tells the late Aaroniero not to worry because he is going to clean up his mess. But before he can do anything, he is approached by Byakuya. He immediately identifies him as a captain because of his clothing. After introducing himself and revealing his rank within the Espada, he asks Byakuya to reveal his identity, but Byakuya states that names are irrelevant. If he wants to identify him as something, then he should identify him as the enemy. He then questions whether if Zommari is responsible for Rukia laying on the ground beaten. When he states that it wasn't him but he was about to finish her off, Byakuya's calm expression turns to stern anger. Pointing his Zanbakuto towards Byakuya, he questions whether if something is wrong. Why is it that the captain has yet to attack? He then states states that reviving Rukia would be pointless, and he suggests that he doesn't do so, when Byakuya states that he doesn't understand why it would be pointless, and he appears behind Zommari. Just as he is about to attack him, a clone of the Espada appears behind Byakuya. About to attack him, Byakuya defends the attack and makes some distance between them. The Espada reveals one of his unique abilities, called Gemelo Sonido. It is a variation of the Sonido technique that only Zommari can use. By increasing the number of steps within his normal movement, he can increase his speed to the point where he can leave after images of himself, and these after images act as clones. We later learn that the maximum number of clones that he can create with this technique is 5, and in typical fashion he uses this technique to distract his opponent and to attack them by surprise. Zommari then demonstrates his overzealous nature as he tells Byakuya that he shouldn't feel ashamed for not being able to track his clones with his eyes, but Byakuya proves that his abilities are no match for him as he lunges towards the Espada and strikes him across his chest, and when Zommari appears behind him, he yet again strikes him against the chest again. Zommari tries to surprise Byakuya by creating yet another clone. The captain is already one step ahead of him as he uses his Hado technique Byakurai to fire a beam through his chest. When the Espada reveals that his Sonido technique can create up to 5 clones, he uses them to encircle Byakuya and to stab him all at once. He bids farewell as he refers to him as a nameless captain. He states that he had lost because he was too arrogant and refused to identify himself, but when Zommari looks closely, it appears that he had only stabbed through Byakuya's captain's coat. Byakuya had evaded the attack when he reveals that he had used a technique that Yoriichi had taught him. He then refers to Zommari as the arrogant one, but he won't defeat the Espada because of his arrogance, but rather because of the vast difference in their power. Byakuya had called Zommari arrogant for the fact that an arrancar thinks that he is the same class as him. He refers to this as the height of arrogance. Zommari calls Byakuya insolent as he takes up a strange pose, as his head completely tilts 90 degrees to the right as he activates his Resurreccion called Cursing Eye Monk. His physical appearance completely transforms as he has 58 eyes all around his body. These allow him to target up to 58 opponents. Zommari raises his hand towards Byakuya, revealing there to be an eye on the palm of his hand. While facing it towards Byakuya, the pupil of the eye turns from white to black. The captain, anticipating an attack, appears behind the Espada. Zommari questions Byakuya that he had anticipated an attack but nothing had happened. He tells him that the effects of his ability are already taking place, as a marking appears on the left leg of Byakuya, revealing that it now belongs to Zommari. He states that everything in existence is governed by its rightful master. Subordinates act under the orders of their superiors. The masses live under the rule of the king. The clouds move in response to the will of the wind, and the moonlight is governed by the light of the sun. The Espada states that through his Resurreccion, he has power over anything that he looks upon. He refers to this power as Amor. Byakuya has a pretty blank expression after the Espada explains his ability. Zommari takes this as him not really understanding what he had just said. He sympathizes with the captain, stating that these things are incomprehensible to those who lack wisdom. When Zommari controls Byakuya's left leg to move forward, Byakuya slashes the muscles and tendons in his leg so that it is unable to move now under the Espada's command. Zommari then directs his eyes towards Rukia's body, but Byakuya appears in front of her to protect her. Byakuya's left hand is then under the control of the Espada, but he also cuts the muscles to his left arm so that the Espada cannot control him. Zommari is impressed that Byakuya was so calmly able to disable his left leg and his left arm without any hesitation. He refers to him as being ruthless, while also being very decisive and cold-blooded. The only way that Byakuya can now fight back is through his right arm and his right leg. Continuing to be overzealous, he states to challenge an Espada like himself, it would be foolish to do so with only control over 2 limbs. But Byakuya reiterates what he had said before, as he states that the difference between the two of them is like the difference between heaven and earth, elaborating that even though he has given up one of his arms and one of his legs, Zommari is far from being his equal even in this condition. The Espada believes that Byakuya is overestimating his own strength, as he reveals that each of the eyes that are on his body can control one subject. Zommari's marking appears on the head of Rukia as she cuts down Aaroniero, who is trying to help her. He then holds Rukia hostage by controlling her to hold a Zanbakudo to her neck. He explains that if one of his eyes controls the head of his opponent, then the rest of the body will follow. He tells Byakuya to drop his Zanbakudo, but as he does so, he binds Rukia in a Bakudo spell, preventing her from moving. Then after activating his Bankai, he surrounds the Espada with his Zenbon Zakura Petal petals. Zommari attempts to control all of the petals that Byakuya has unleashed, but Byakuya explains that if one eye can control one subject, how does he have any hope to control 100 million blade petals with only 50 eyes that he can use? Then in one of Byakuya's most epic lines, he throws Zommari's words back at him, as he quotes Zommari as saying that it was pointless to say Rukia, and even when he had referred to the captain as powerless, he tells Zommari that if he wants to see pointlessness, then he should just try saving himself in this situation. Byakuya then fires the blade petals towards Zommari as the building that they are in is completely destroyed. Zommari had hidden himself within a defensive sphere by using his ability El Embryon, but despite this, he sustains heavy injury from Byakuya's attack. After heavily panting, he curses Byakuya, stating that he will pay for what he has done. He attempts to control Byakuya again, but the captain blocks it by using a Bakudo spell called Danku. Byakuya had realized that Zommari's technique is very similar to Kido spells, explaining why the Bakudo spell Danku, which creates a wall that blocks Kido and Hado, is effective against Zommari's ability. When Zommari continues to try and control Byakuya, he appears behind the Espada and points his sword towards his neck. He states that Zommari's frustration had blinded him, and it is embarrassing that he refers to himself as the fastest Espada. In his final moments, Zommari begs Byakuya to have mercy, but the captain is unnerved by his pleading. He questions Byakuya if he is going to cut him. Is he going to execute him? As he yells out that Byakuya is behaving arrogantly. And then interestingly, he starts speaking on moral terms about how the Shinigami slay hollows as if they were vermin. He questions Byakuya whether if they think they are gods. What right do the Shinigami have to slaughter hollows? He asks whether if it is because they devour humans, and if that is the case, then who had assigned the Shinigami as the protectors of the humans? He states that nobody had given the Shinigami the authority to kill hollows, and yet they call the hollows evil and they try to kill them. He yells out that the Shinigami believe that they hold the power of justice in their hands, and before he can finish off his moral argument, Byakuya appears behind him. After having cut him across the shoulder, he questions Zommari as to what makes him think that he was acting as a Shinigami in this instance. On this occasion, the captain had cut down Zommari because he had dared to aim his blade at his pride, which of course is Rukia. Before dissolving away into the atmosphere, Zommari shouts out praises for Aizen, and this is how the 7th Espada is ultimately defeated. We know that each of the Espada were given their respective aspects of death by Kubo, and when it comes to Zommari, his aspect of death was Intoxication, and this is of course in reference to his abilities that allow him to control the bodies of others. He intoxicates them and makes them lose control. And if you remember, Zommari had delivered to Byakuya this whole speech about how everything in existence is governed by its rightful master. He gave examples of various things like how the moonlight is ruled by the light of the sun, but it is pretty hypocritical because the things that Zommari controls over, he is not the rightful owner of. So while he tries to intoxicate others, the only one who is actually intoxicated is Zommari himself, as he believes that he is far too powerful than what he actually is. And this was demonstrated by his overzealous nature during his battle against Byakuya. It was like his strength and power had gotten to his head, as he genuinely believed he was an equal to the captain. But Byakuya rightfully stated that the difference between them is like that of the heaven and the earth. So with all of this said, what did you think about the strange but interesting Espada Zommari? Again, he's not one of the most memorable characters to feature within Bleach, but did his appearance leave you wanting to see more of him? I would love to read all of your thoughts and comments about this Espada, so definitely continue the discussion about him in the comments down below. And lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I can't wait to see you in my next Bleach character analysis video. If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.